An individual is an angel, part of a collective resonance of their higher self, sent forth, separated from their higher self to be on the front lines of co-creation, co-creating in possibly freedom to truly love, being in a space where you have equivalent options for learning from within or learning from without. And when you choose to learn from within, it's very profound. It's meaningful because you had your freedom. Now, part of entering into the veil of forgetfulness is it comes with the territory of entering into a polarity, a duality matrix. When you enter into civilization or society where there's good and bad, me and other, there's a facade of competition revving up in everything that surrounds you, you buy into the polarities, and in buying into polarities you detach yourself from your higher self in eternity. And innately in the individual there is a profound cadence of abandonment and shame. For the individual innately feels responsible for that exile, because on a deep level they can feel in their heart that they're being beckoned to something more than they are. But they have no idea what is the cause of this impasse. And they're stuck, and they feel stuck, but they feel in their heart tugging them that they're supposed to be something more. But they don't hear the resonance that's coming through their heart because they haven't learned the language of freedom. So an individual will hear their heart beating, attain, 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 do more, do more, do more, it's not enough, when they're in a imprisoned consciousness. And when they enter into freedom, the heart is not saying attain. The heart says love. And it's just because you didn't understand the language that you misinterpreted what your heart was saying, because you didn't know the language of true love and freedom. Individual's never alone in this dimension. An individual has the ability to close the shade, to perceive themselves as alone. And in perceiving themselves as alone, they do see themselves as being alone, competing alone, owning, doing on their own. They feel there are some are worthy and some that are not worthy. They feel there are those that compete and those that are stronger, better, and those that are weaker and obsolete. But that's because the individual's shame. The individual has detached himself from the gates of eternity and knows it deep inside and is compensating for that. And if they're not feeding off the reservoir of the river of eternity, then they have this big hole in their hearts. That hole in the heart is shame. And their shame is broadcasting that banishment. That is the darkness. That is the bridge between them and that river that they cannot cross and they cannot confront. And within the biblical archetype, it's the coordinates are very clear. Adam and Eve eat from the tree of good and evil, but before it was good and evil, it was a tree of truth and falsehood. It was a tree of is or isn't. But once they eat from the fruit of that tree, it's no longer the tree of good and evil, as the mystics explain, of truth and falsehood, as the mystics explain. It becomes the tree of good and evil. It becomes a tree of perception where the virtualities appear to be real. And they have vertigo, and they don't know between up and down and right and left. And there's so much variation, and they all seem equivalent, morally equivalent. And it's at that stage that the biblical archetype goes that Vayipach ba'apav, their eyes opened, and they saw they were naked. And they went to grab onto fig leaves to create aprons, to cover themselves. according to the archetype. And when the Spirit of God calls forth, Ayeka, where are you? And know that the Spirit of God did not say Ayeka, but that it was interpreted as Ayeka because they were in a state of banishment. You see? God said, I love you. They heard, where are you? Because their perception cannot understand I love you, unconditional love. So they hear it as, where are you? And they say, we are hiding. Why are you hiding? Because we were naked. Who told you you're naked? How do you know there's a problem to be naked? How do you know there's such a thing as shame? What is there to be shame about? Oh, you're stuck in dualities. You're stuck in polarities. You're stuck in vertigo. You're stuck in the virtual is. But you're not in the is. You're in the isn't. And you're in a state of death and dying because you're detached from eternity. Is God giving them punishments? No, that's the way they heard it. These are consequences of their actions. Of course, they won't live forever now. They've stuck in polarities and they're divorced from eternity. Of course, the woman will have difficulty in childbirth because there's an archetype, but in all things that you bring forth will come through the school of hard knocks because you're stuck in polarities, dualities, and bias and hatred. And of course the ground will be difficult to toil. It will be by the sweat of the brow because you're in the dog-eat-dog world and you're going to render it through your sheer will. Because you're not going to align with eternity to help manifest abundance. And of course, when an Adam is confronted in the archetype and says, why did you eat from this tree that I told you I designated not to eat from this polarity tree? Adam says, he could have said, I ate from it because I wanted to understand you better and miss you so I could love you more. He could have said that. He could have said, I made a mistake and I was wrong. I got confused. But he was in judgments, so he could not hear, I love you. He heard, where are you? So he says, the woman that you created gave it to me to eat. De facto saying, what are you blaming me for? It's your fault. It's not my fault. I'm passing the buck to you because you're the one who created her out of me. And she's the one who gave it to me to eat in the archetype. So he's blaming the feminine energies of detachment in order to manifest space for independence and true love. You're the one who created this construct. Why are you blaming me if I slip in the void? It's your fault. He should have said, thank you for creating this void. So I made a big black hole so we can now connect and you're bringing forth light. And so the archetype has rendered material consciousness in a cycle ever since. This abstract archetype. I'm not saying it happened this way in a material sense, but it happened this way in a non-linear sense, in a world that is not on this material realm. And so, the first thing that the angel confronts in this world at the age of 4 or 5, when they begin to learn how to speak untruths, they know the difference between true and falsehood. When that comprehension of understanding the difference between what's true and what's not, and there's a polarity between what's true and what's not. When polarity takes root in the child's mind, the child then understands shame. This child then understands prejudice. The child then can act with bigotry. And the child will then torture themselves shame because they feel they're supposed to be more than that. And they'll compensate for that shame by acting out on others.